So we said on Tzadik Amar Aleph, about from the top down in the Gemara, about 15 lines with Ditanan, and we're bringing a proof that with Truma, Gedule Truma is called Truma, and Gedule Meiser is not called Meiser at all. It's just called Chulin, like we already mentioned. Ditanan we learn in a Mishnah in Trumois, Gedule Tevel, Gedule Meiser Sheni. It's Chulin. If you would replant the Tevel and you would replant the Meiser Sheni, all it would be called, the new growth would only be called Chulin. So therefore, that would not work between these two brises because we referred to in the brises as Meiser, and if it was one of them was Gedule Meiser, would never have been even called Meiser. Ela Lokasha, we still don't have a problem. We can answer it. Haba Meiser Rishon, V'Haba Meiser Sheni. Meiser Rishon, we can say that that's where it was not lav of lo Sachsom, Shor B'disho, because that was the Levi's. Because that was Meiser Rishon. Meiser Sheni is considered to be the owner's. He's supposed to eat it, and there he should not muzzle his animal because it's just like any other produce. He's not allowed to muzzle his animal for. Biboy Zema, Haba Meiser Sheni. We could even learn differently. We could say, but both prices we were referring to, it was talking about Meiser Sheni. Then why would there be a difference in the first price? It would be talking about. It would say that it's not going to be a lav of lo Sachsom, and in the second verse it is a lav. How can it be? So below kasha, it's not a kasha. Ha Rabbi Meir, ha Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Meir, well, they were cholik on how to learn Meiser Sheni, whether it's considered mammon gavoa, it's considered of hektishes, or if it's considered the mammon of the person whose Meiser it was originally, mammon hediot. And if we would say it's mammon gavoa, then there wouldn't be any lav of lo Sachsom because it's not the owner's to be allowing his animal to eat it, so there's not a problem so much of muzzling his animal. But if it's his own mammon, so then it's a problem for him to muzzle his animal. Effectively more. Right, and this is the explanation. Ha Rabbi Meir do Omar Meiser Sheni Mammon Gavoa. Is Mammon Gavoa? That would be the first price where it's not a problem to muzzle. Ha Rabbi Yehuda do Omar Meiser Sheni Mammon Hediotu. That would be the second price where it is a problem because it's his own mammon. Therefore, he shouldn't be muzzling his animal when he's doing tisha on that type of produce. Hechidami. What are we talking about? What do we mean here? Hechidami. Hechidami. Rashi says where we on the Gemara down about 8-9 lines to the heavy meiser kodim ledisha. How can it be a case that we have it being called meiser and we're doing disha on meiser? We're supposed to. That's before the miruach hakri. The disha is before the final of the gemar malacha, and that's when it's called. That's when it has a chiyuv. You have to meiser it. It gets the shem tevel, and then you have to meiser it. But before, and we're dealing with disha, an earlier stage than that. So how can we have that we're dealing with meiser that's being threshed? Hey vidami, going, and for the Gemara, we're talking the haktimu b'shibolin. That what happened was he should have waited, but while it was still like in sheaves, he called on it shem meiser, like meiser rishon or meiser sheni, early, and then it was chal the shem meiser on it, and then that's even though he's not supposed to have done it that early. Right, the Gemara. So that's right. Now we said according to Rabbi Yehuda, it's called Mammon Hediot. Meiser Sheni is Mammon Hediot. So that would be the second brisa where it's usher to muzzle. He's over if he muzzles. With Rabbi Yehuda, boy, how can you tell me that it's if you would muzzle it now because it's Meiser Sheni, he is going to be over on Lo Sachsom. It's called Meiser Sheni, Still, even if it's mamon hediot, it's still meiser shein. It's got shem meiser shein on it, and it's supposed to be eaten not here. It's supposed to be eaten. It's also to eat it here. You have to take it to Shalim and eat it. So there's a lav of not to eat it here, to take it to Shalim, and what we're seeing is that the lav of lo Sachsom Shor B'disho is now taking precedence. And if you would be choisim the mouth of this animal, he'd be over on a lav, on that lav. So that means that that lav is pushing off the lav that is supposed to be eaten in the chomos of Yerushalayim, because it's not supposed to even be fed to the animals. So like there's a lav right there. So how come the lav of lo Sachsom is like overriding the lav of not and we're saying that he's actually being over on that lav. How can he actually be over on the lav of lo Sachsom when he's over on a different lav of eating it outside of Yerushalayim? Rashi says where we are on the Gemara down about 8-9 lines. Boy, choyme, it's still supposed to be eaten, even though it's a moment head. It's still supposed to be eaten in Yerushalayim. It's also there's an isser of eating it outside of the walls of Yerushalayim. The heichi asi love the lo Sachsom. How could it be? Therefore, he's over on lo Sachsom. That means that lo Sachsom is pushing away this other lav. Love the lo Sachsom. V'doche love the lo soichel. That you're not supposed to eat it wherever you are and wherever you live. So that's what's happening. It's pushing one love up. How can it do that? The more answers, the reason is that it's really within the walls, because they rebuilt a new wall around the older walls. They built like a newer wall around that, which also more says, Kagon Shadash Lifni Mechoimos Beis Pagi. It was like an outer wall that was built around. The next Rashi says Beis Pagi Hekif Chitzon Shel Yerushalayim is the furthest outer wall around Yerushalayim. There was like few walls that were surrounding Yerushalayim completely, like maybe 2 or 3. So Shosifu Olai, but they added on afterwards Beis Pagi. I guess it was Beis Pagi, and they call Olav, Shosifu Olav, Karuyi Beis Pagi, it was called Beis Pagi. Venerally, all right.
This is in the time of the Mishnah or the Gemara that you're talking about this? What's taking long?
Around the Mishnah time, yeah. So, and that's what happened. He was eating within those walls, so it was within the walls. So the only issur that was being looked at over here was lo Sachsom. That was the other issur wasn't taking place over here because that condition was being fulfilled. In fact, the more Ibo is ema lo kasha. We could say another reason why it's not a kasha between the two brises. Lo kasha kan b'meiser vadai, kan b'meiser demai. We could say that one was real meiser. It might be. It was real meiser, and therefore that's why it would not be an isser. Here it could be referring to here. Yeah, we're talking about meiser sheni. Rashi says we are on the Gemara down about 15 lines. Kan b'meiser demai, the delay say element d'Rabbanan. That's only d'Rabbanan. Okay, right. Okay, so the Gemara, back in the Gemara. So we could say that meiser vadai is where it was not, and a person wasn't over if he was muzzled his animal, because it wasn't in the walls. It was outside of the walls. And he wasn't over. It was just because
we moved on to this
so the case where it was Meiser Demai, that's where it would be over, because that's like chulin. It's only a d'Rabbanan, and where it's not going to be over, that's where he's not going to be over. That's where he will not be over on the lav, because it's like, maybe that's going to go to Rabbi Meir, that it's Mammon Gavoa. And both of these, then all of this would be according to Rabbi Meir, it's Mammon Gavoa, and the Meiser Sheni is Mammon Gavoa, so he wouldn't be over on the Lav Lo Sachsom. And the case where the second mission where he was over was when it was only Meiser of Demai, and it's not even, it's like Chulin, because it's only D'Rabbanan, and then it's not supposed to be muzzling his animal for produce like that. But Khan b'Meiser Demai. So Hashta, to Osis Lahaki, once we answer an answer like this, that we can be mechalik between Meiser Badai and Meiser Demai, we could have done that for a Truma. Truma, nami lokash. So, hasha de osis lachi. Once we come on to an answer like this, we could have said the same thing for truma. Truma is not a problem. Nami lokasha. Why? Kan betruma vadai was mamash real truma. Kan betruma demai. It could have just come from a ama arts. Truma demai or maisa demai is when an ama arts has it's a suffix whether he took meiser or not, and somebody buys it from him. You don't know whether he took meiser or not from it. So they were gozer, the Chazal were gozer that when buying from an Amaretz that he probably didn't meiser before, there's a good chance, so he have to remeiser it. But it's only a meiser achiyuv d'Rabbanan. So that's what we said by meiser, but we want to say it now by truma. When a person takes truma gedola, he has first he takes like 1/100th, certain amount from a whole pile for the Kohen, and then they take meiser rishon after that. So we want to say that the truma, real truma is where it. Person, if he was doing disha on real truma and he muzzled his animal, there wouldn't be a problem because it was the Kohen's. And truma of the maiman is somebody bought truma from a amaretz that is probably this Cree probably never had the truma taken off of it. Produce from an amaretz. So then he would have to take midrabanan like truma gedola midrabanan. And therefore, we could say that that's almost like chulin also. It's only d'Rabbanan. So therefore, if he was doing disha on type of a produce like that, he would not be over on lo Sachsom. We could say the same thing.
So he bought it in the ear.
He bought it from a Amaretz.
Before it was threshed.
He bought it, right, because he wants to do the threshing now. Right, he's trying to do the threshing now. So Bishlema, no. Meiser, we could say this by Meiser. We can't say this by Truma. Bishlema Meiser Demai Ika. There is such a thing as Meiser Demai. That all of Demai is suffix Meiser. That's the only way we see it. We see it by Meiser. But we don't see Truma Demai. And the Truma Demai Mi Ika, there doesn't exist Truma Demai. Because when Ezra came, that time we learn it, we'll see what it says. That time we learn in the Brisa, Af hu bittul es havidui, begozer ala demai. Right. So Ezra came, and the Levium didn't come up with Nehemiah. So Ezra wanted all of these types of people, the Kahanim and Levim, to come so they could help with the Beis Hamikdash. They didn't come. So he was Mavatal. He took it away from. He took the Meiser Rishon away from the Levim and gave it to the Kahanim as a kanas. And there's a video that you're supposed to say on the 4th and 7th year of the Shemitah cycle, when they're doing biur Meiser from their house. Sometimes people keep their Meiser in their house for a long time, and then they give it later. So there's on the 4th and 7th year, you're supposed to biur akadosh min habayis. You're supposed to get rid of all of that and give it to whoever you're supposed to give it to, if it's to the Kohen or to the Levi. And at that time, you're supposed to say a vidui, a lashon. It says, I've given everything to the Kohen and I've given everything to the Levim. So when Ezra was mevatel from giving the truma the Meiser Rishon to the Levim, you could not say the vidui anymore because the lashon of the vidui is I gave my portion to the Levim. You couldn't say that anymore. So Ezra was mevatel the vidui, and then he at the same time he's also geyser on demai, but he sent shluchim all over the country to see what Lagabi demai, what you can rely on and what you can't. We saw that the Amoratzim, they weren't taking Meiser, but they were taking Truma, because Truma is a curry, so it's more Chomer. So they saw they were taking that. So he wasn't Gozer Demai on Truma in the first place. One Daf Tzadi Aleph, a little bit down from the midpoint of the Amud. So it says, Ad Demai. He sent all over Eretz Israel to see what was really taking place. The only thing that they were mafresh, the Amoratzim, was Truma Gedola. So he didn't make a demai on Truma Bilvad. They were only mafresh Truma Gedola Bilvad, and not Meiser. So he was geyser on demai that if someone would buy from an Amoratzim, he would have to take Meiser D'Rabbanan, but not he wouldn't have to take Truma Gedola Midrabbanan. So they can't say that the same answer that we gave, one is Meiser Vadai and one is Meiser Demai. We can't say that with Truma. One is Truma Vadai and one is Truma Demai, because it doesn't exist, Truma Demai. In the Lokasha, we don't have a problem. Kam Truma Meiser, Trumas Meiser. Vadai Kam Trumas Meiser Demai. No. We could say when we said in the two brises, it was Lashon was Trumas Meiser. So we could say it was Trumas Meiser. Actually, the lashon of the Mishnah was Truma v'Meiser. But here we want to say it's not a problem. We could say Kan, Trumas Meiser Vadai, and Kan Trumas Meiser Demai. That, in other words, the way they want to answer is that the lashon of Truma means that we could be referring to the Trumas Meiser, not Truma, real Truma. You could just be answering that the lashon Truma, and between the two brises, when it's Trumas Meiser, then there is Demai, and that's Trumas Meiser is what the Levi, after he gets his Meiser Rishon, he takes Truma Mina Truma. He got his Truma Rishon, which is 1/10 of what is left after the Truma Gedolah is taken. His Meiser Rishon is 1/10 of what's left of the whole pile after the Truma. For the Truma Gedolah is taken out and given to the Kohen. And then the Levi takes from now what he has, that 10th that he just received, he takes 1/10 of that. That's called Trumas Meiser, and he gives that to the Kohen. So we could say over here that the Lashon Truma v'Meiser, that it's referring to Trumas Meiser, which is, there was Demai on that, and therefore we could have an answer on the Truma. Practically more, boy mine mirav sheishis. Haisa oicheles umitrezis. Mao. We're going back to the lab of los Sachsom Shor. What happens if the wheat kernels cause shilshul? So what happens if the animal has shilshul, and the wheat kernels that he would eat if he was not muzzled would be bad for his stomach? So is it also there to muzzle the animal when it would hurt him when he's sick at the time when he's sick? Mao, what's the din? What's the suffix? Mishum dimale lahu v'halo male law. What's the isur lo sachsom shod b'disho? Because it's good for him to be able to eat, and here it's not good for him because he's sick. So therefore, there wouldn't be any lav lo sachsom shod b'disho. Or dilma techazia mitzdaira. Or maybe the whole lav of lo sachsom shod b'disho is because he'll see it and he'll want to eat it. And he'll be hungry to eat it. So therefore, in that case, even if he was sick, he'll still see it and want to eat it, and that should be the issur should still apply. That was the suffix of the Gemara. Omar Lahu Rav Sheshis Tanisua. We learned it in a brisa. Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai Omer. Maybe Kashina v'toila law shakashina yafos law minakol. We saw above in the first brisa, Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai said that in the bag that you should put around its neck for him to eat the feed bag, you should put karshina because that's the best food for it. So from there we see shmamina mishum dumale lo. We see who shmamina. We see that that's the answer. That what's the lav of lo sachsom shor b'disha? Because it's good for the animal to be able to eat. It's good. It helps him. It's good for him. So therefore, when it's not good for him, there won't be any lav of lo sachsom shor b'disha. So therefore, if the animal is sick and the wheat kernels would hurt his stomach, it's not a problem to muzzle him, to keep him from eating. Iboilahu, mao shiyomar odam lenochri, chosum parasai v'doshbo. Take my para and dosh and do thresh your produce with my and muzzle my animal and thresh your produce. So mi amrin, do we say ki amrinin amira lenachri shvus? Do we say that telling a goy to do an isser? It's an isser d'rabbanan. It's hanimili le'inyan Shabbos. It's only by Shabbos to tell. That's where it's usher to tell a goy to do an isser for the isser skila, because Shabbos malachos of Shabbos is an isser skila. It's misa. It's misa's based in. About chasima to isser lav lo, but just the lav of lo sachsom shor b'disur is a lav. And this person does it, but mezid and with hasra, he gets malchus. It's not misa, so maybe there, since it's not its chomer, so maybe there would not be a problem of amir la'akum in the case to tell him to do with that type of an isser. Oh, Dilma, maybe lo shano, maybe there's no difference. Doesn't matter what the onish is in the isser. It's always usher d'rabbanan. There's always a shvus, an isser d'rabbanan, to tell an akum to do an isser. Bring rayas. Tashma. What's the answer? Nachri hadash b'paraso shel Yisrael. There's a brisa that says that Nachri would take a para of a Yisrael and he would do disha with it, and so ain't over. He himself is not over. Mishum bal Sachsom. We see he's not over when he does his disha on his own produce with the Yisrael's animal. It's not over. So the Gemara is medayik from that brayse. It says ma'averhu dilo over. He himself is not over on the isser. It doesn't mean that there's no isser here. It's just not over on it. Ha isura ika. That means that someone was over. Someone did an isser. The Yisrael did an isser. The Yisrael's animal mashma, but he's not over on it. So isser ika. The Gemara says really. So that would tell us that there isn't. That would tell us that there is an isser of amir lenachri, even in the case of lo sachsom. If it's still an isser, that means the one who told him to do it was over on an isser. The Gemara says, "B'din hu de usur nami leika." Really, there's not even any isser, so we can't really. We want to now say that we can't bring a proof that amir lenachri in the case in a stam lab is also an isser d'rabbanan. There's no isser either. Why? If you look in the Seifa, the Yisrael hadash b'paraso shel nachri, that the Seifa spoke about a Yisrael that would take the goy's animal and do disha. He's over. He's over on the lav of those sachsom. So therefore, that's why they mentioned in the Reisha the lashon over, that he's over. But it doesn't mean that when it says he's not over, doesn't mean that there's any isser. Just that we wanted it to be symmetrical format to the Seifa. So Tana Reisha, so they also to the Reisha. So Tana Reisha ain't no over. So therefore, that's since the Seifa said that if Yid would do disha with the goy's animal, he would be over. So they said in the Reisha also that if a goy would do disha, he's not over. But it doesn't mean that there was an isser. Ain't no over. And if we would say like this, that means there's no isser d'rabbanan even in the lav lo sachsom to tell a nachri to do a lo sachsom with one's animal. Tashma tisholchu le'avu Shmuel. They sent to Avu Shmuel, the father of Shmuel, Halan Turai, these oxen, to Ganvin Amurai, that they were certain goyim stole. Uminagchin ison, and they sterilized them. They were mastries them. So what happened? What's the din? What's the din? Really, for a yid to be mastries an animal is usher. It's an isser. What happened was they would arrange with the goyim to steal them, be masters them, and then give them back. So it wasn't they were stolen. So they didn't do it. The din is, the shayla is, what's the din? Is this possible to do? So sholach lehu harama is abid bu. That was he did a trick in order to just have them sterilized, since the yid himself couldn't do it. Why? Because when they were sterilized, they could plow much better. They were more strong. They were stronger. They could plow better. That's why they would want to sterilize them. So he told them it's a trick, and it's not. You can't do tricks that in order to get around halacha. A loophole is abid bahu. Arimu alayhu yizdavnun. So we should do a trick to the person the yid who sold it, who had the goy steal it from him, and make that he has to sell the animal. He can't use it. He can't have the benefit of it. He went to the right. Omar Papa, Bnei Morava, Sovereign Law. In the Eretz Israel, they thought, Gabi, this Shaila, Kirebi Chidka. They thought that the din should be like Reb Chidka to Omar Bnei Noach Mitzaven ala Srisus. He held that the goyim are also they have a lav not to be masterous animals, sterilized animals. The kovre, and therefore what happened was really that when the yid told the goy, spoke out to the goy that it should be stolen, he was being machshir the goy, because the goy himself had the alav not to do this, and therefore that was the kanas. So the kovre, and what the yid was really over on was lifnei iver lo siten michshal. Rashi, opposite what we are on the Gemara, Mishum lifnei iver lo siten michshal, aval bedover she'ein hanachri muzar, and therefore, Rav Papa was saying this, if we would learn like this, like Reb Chidka, that would mean that if it was something where the guy didn't have a lab for himself, wasn't muzhar about and it was only a lab, then a yid would be able to tell the guy to do that issa. It would be coming out that over here the only reason it's a problem is because the yid is being machshil the guy in something that's also for the guy.
In that case, why would they have to do the ruse of selling, of having him steal it? If it's permitted, then they wouldn't have to do that. They could just have a non-Jew castrate it.
No, because it's us. No, because it's us for a yid to do it.
Right, but if it's okay for a yid to tell a non-Jew to do it, then they wouldn't have to do the ruse of stealing. They just say do it to the non-Jew. Why did they have the ruse? Why did they get the non-Jew to steal?
I hear what you're saying. So according to this, they want to say it was only because of lifnei iver lo sikin mishra about bedover she'ein anachri muzhar olav ein malach shai. I might say that it's muter. So that's what Rav Papa they thought to say like that. And if they would say like that, then you're right. You could just you could have a guy could no, you can't if a yid is usher, then he's doing it for the yid. That's like the yid doing it himself.
Right, but if we say that it's not usher for a yid to ask a goy to do something that's forbidden for the yid, then the yid could simply say to the goy, take this bull and castrate it and give it back to you.
I couldn't do that. No.
Why not?
Because it would have to be that the goy steals it and is doing it like on his own accord, not because the yid right. You still have to have that it wasn't the yid telling him to do it for himself. It's just that when it's also for the goy, the whole discussion of hey, you steal it and then give it back to me, is different than lo Sachsom. It's lifnei iver, lo Sachsom michshal, and so it's just that if they wasn't usher for the goy, then they could have said, and you steal it and give it back to me. But you couldn't do it straight out because then it would be for the yid, and he's usher for a yid. But before that was in Israel, they thought like that. But before that, they said that it's stam harama, and there's a knas for whoever did it, and they forcing the yid to sell the animal and never use it for having done such a trick. That he who thought he was going to go to the effort of having a guy steal it and give it back, and then he masters it so he could have a stronger ox for plowing, he went through a lot of efforts. So the knas is, we're not going to let him have any hanor from that animal. You have to sell it. The Gemara says, so originally, so Sova Rava, Lemema Yim Karu L'Shchita, right? So once we saw that he has to sell it, so Rava thought that the sell it as Shchita. Because if we're knasing the Yid, we don't want him to be able to sell it for radia, for plowing, then he'll benefit from having done this trick, because he'll now be able to sell it for more money because it strengthened the ox for plowing. Rava thought that when we're giving him a kanas, that we should even kanas him on as to for what he's selling it as, just for shchita. Then he wouldn't benefit from the fact that it was sterilized. Omar Abaye dayan shekanasta aleihim mechira. No, it's enough that you forced him to just sell it because he went through this effort in order to be able to use it as for plowing, and you're not even letting him use the animal at all. You're forcing him to get rid of the animal. That alone is enough of a kanas. Now he has to go buy more animals. More says pshita. The following is pshita. Pshita b'no gadol. So the Rashi explains that when they sell it, they have to sell it to somebody else, an acher. More says that it's pashut that it's mutar to sell it to an older son. When he goes to sell it, he can sell it to an older son. Pshita gadol ki acher dami. That's okay to sell it to an older son. Rashi, we'll read on the Gemara down 3 lines. Ki acher dami. That should be okay. Vadai imachulo. For some reason, it's a vadai clear that shouldn't be a problem because he is selling it, and he's selling. And a gadol, he's a gadol. And it doesn't say anywhere you can't sell it to your own family. So you could be. It's enough of a kanas. What about a cotton that's still samach on the shulchan of the father? A cotton, b'no cotton, what will be the din? Rab Achai osa v'Rab Ashi shari. Rab Achai says you cannot. Rab Ashi says that you cannot sell to a small child that's still living by the father. It's still like the father. It's like selling it to himself. And Rab Ashi says you can do it. Mrema v'Marzutro omre law. Meaning that Rav Ashi was very makel, allowing to sell it back. It's like selling it to himself. And here we see another akula, that Merema and Marzutra, the Omrei law, Haneu Trei Chasidai, Michal Feadode. That they switched animals. They had their 2 animals. They had a goy steal it and mastress it and give it back to them. And then they had to have a kanas, and they exchanged animals between each other. And that was the end of it. I guess they were makel in that way. Boy Rami Barchama Hoshiv law kites the. Let's say a person puts a thorn in the animal. He doesn't muzzle the animal, but he fixes a thorn in the animal's mouth somehow. That every time he bites down, it hurts him because the thorn. Mao. One says Hoshiv law chasima mal yosahi. That's just like muzzling the mouth because your mom is doing something that prevents him from being able to eat. That's the lav of Sachsom. Ella, that's not the shaila. The shaila was Yoshab law kites b'pia mouth. What happens if a kotz just comes into the mouth? Is there a mitzvah to take it out of its mouth because of the lav of lo Sachsom Shor? And this thorn that came into the mouth by itself, it's preventing him from eating. Is there a mitzvah, therefore, to take it out of his mouth? The Gemara continues to ask, a rovitz lo ari b'chutz mao. If the owner took a ari, and put it outside near where the animal was walking around doing the threshing, is that considered chasima, putting a muzzle on because the animal can't eat because it's too scared? It's just running around the round and around threshing mill, but it can't eat because it doesn't have a mind to eat. And is that called being muzzling or not? So rovat's law, chasima mal yosehi, that's just like putting a real muzzle on the animal. That's the lav lo Sachsom if one would do it for that intention. Ella, that's not what we meant. That's not what the shaila was. Rovat's law ari mibachutz mao. What if it was there by itself? And I guess the shaila is there? I guess is there an Indian to take it, make it go away or something? So and it continues. What about taking the baby of the cow and putting it outside? So is that going to be? It'll be interested in its own baby, so maybe it won't eat as much. Or what about tzama l'mayimau? What if is it a mitzvah to give it to drink so that it can eat some? Because by being so thirsty, it won't eat anything. It won't want to eat. What about paras lo katvole al gabi di shemau? To take it's stomping on the kernels and on the sheaves. What about to cover it with some type of a leather so that it can't see what it's crushing, but it's still able to crush it. As it walks, it still crushes it, but it just can't see it. Is that considered lo Sachsom? No. So the Gemara says, Poshut Maha. We can be Poshut the answer from here. Choda Maha Choda. From the following verse, we can at least be Poshut one of these shilas. The time we learn, Rashai Bal Para Lahariv Paroso Kadesh Tochal Mina Adisha Abe. Let's say a person is renting out his para to do disha for a balabayas. He's allowed to starve it a little bit before it goes to work, so it can eat a lot while it's working, and he can get a free meal for it. He's allowed to do that. The Rashai Balabayas, and the Balabayas that is working the animal on his mill, Lahatir Pakia Amir Lifnei Abehema Kidei Shelo Tochal Min Adisha Arbe. He can throw down a certain type of straw over what he wants to have threshed, and then the animal won't see it so much what's underneath it, but it'll still be crushing it, and he's allowed to do that. He'll eat the straw also. And the Gemara says, so therefore they thought that this was a raya that it's mutter to put the spread forest law kat vole al gabi disha. They thought that this was going to be an answer for that by the spreading the straw that it couldn't see it. It was similar to that. The Gemara says it's not similar because it can still eat as it's eating the straw. It can still eat some of the grain that it's doing disha on, and that's why that could be mutter, and it won't give us an answer to the case where he completely covers the grain with a piece of leather. Shani also he is still eating, and he could still eat a few pieces of grain. You could say Rashai Balabayas Lahatir Pakia Amir Lifnei Behema Miakara. They said, or you could answer that what the Brisa was talking about was that it's permitted for the Balabayas to take this leather and place it over the grain. Oh no, we're talking about the straw, throwing straw over the grain. Miakara, Kidei Shelo Tochal Arbe Min Adisha. Meaning before it starts doing the disha, you take straw and you feed it well, so that when it goes to work, it won't eat all the produce that it's working with. So that's mutter. Boy Mine, they asked Rabbi Yonasan Rebbe Simai. What about if it says lo Sachsom Shor b'disho, as it's doing the disha, don't put a muzzle on it. But what about if the person put a muzzle and then led it over to the work and led it to the disha? What's the din? Is that mutter because it's not during the time of the disha? It's just before. It's beforehand. So, Mao Shor b'disho Omar Rachmana. Does the Torah says it has? Is it only an iser shor at the time when it's doing the disha that is not supposed to be muzzled? V'ha'alav b'dishahu, and this is not b'shas the disha because it's before. Or dilma lo tzidoish b'chasima, or is the lav of the Torah don't do threshing with a muzzled animal, and then this would be still the lav. Omar Achmana, Omar le mibeis avich ato lomad. We can learn. Rabbi Yonasan was asking from Rabbi Simai. Rabbi Simai told him, from your house of your father, we can have the answer. He was a Kohen. Ato lomad. The pasuk says, Yayin v'sheichar lo tishte ato v'necha itcha b'viaschem. When you come into the base of Mikdash to do your avoda, don't be drunk, don't drink. So is it mashma that just when you come in, when you're in there, in your coming, you shouldn't be drinking, you shouldn't be drunk? So the more explains, b'biaschem hu de'asa. In the coming in to the base of Mikdash, it's also to be drunk and coming. Ha mishte b'mayil shari. But we can learn from here that if they drank before going to the avodah in the base of Mikdash, that would be okay because they did all the drinking before they coming to the base of Mikdash. But the Gemara says no, because right after that, samach to that, it says the reason why they shouldn't be drinking in their biaschem is because you have to separate between kodesh v'chol, between doing stam work and doing work for the Beis HaMikdash. And the problem with that is that if they would drink beforehand and then come into the Beis HaMikdash, there wouldn't be mavdil, any difference between chol work and kodesh work because they're anyway drunk when they're doing the work in the Beis HaMikdash. Lahavdil ben akodesh ben achol omar rachmano. And that's the problem. It wouldn't make any difference. It wouldn't have that distinction if they would drink first and then go into the Beis HaMikdash. So they learn from that it means no, you can't even drink beforehand. Elama hosam just is there. Bishas bia lo tie shechrus. At the time when you're coming, just don't be drunk. Doesn't mean don't drink as you're coming. Just don't be drunk as you're coming. So too, don't be muzzled as it's doing disha. So hochanami b'shas disha lo tie chasima. That's therefore we learn at the time of the disha he shouldn't be muzzled, and that's where that answers that shaila at least. And we'll stop here.